GK Chesterton described his spiritual journey towards Christianity in his book Orthodoxy, published in 1908. A big part of this journey was to reconcile religion with his political beliefs and his thoughts about reform and progress in society. In our time, like Chesterton's, Christianity is rejected frequently in favour of new beliefs and political systems, whether that is atheism, fundamentalism, Marxism, environmentalism, or something else, with the belief that this new system will solve all of our problems. Therefore, Christianity starts to be seen as something that needs to be shaken off to make way for some utopian philosophy. Chesterton, however, argued that Christianity itself provides the worldview that's most likely to bring about progress in society and positive political reform. Chesterton starts with what he sees as a fundamental error in modern thought. Progress, he says, is achieved by working consistently towards a vision of the world that you'd like to bring about. Modern people often get this wrong by thinking that progress is achieved by constantly changing the vision. This actually prevents any real change from happening because it takes time and effort to achieve real change, and this can't happen if we're constantly shifting the goalposts. Chesterton saw in his day what we see in ours: academics, journalists, and ordinary people thinking that they're bringing about change when they're actually just developing more extreme philosophies of progress without giving the time to put them into action. Chesterton sees a solution to this in Christianity. Christianity holds that God's plan for humanity has been fixed since before the beginning of time. His vision for what the world should be like was the Garden of Eden, and the necessity for constant struggle and reform is real, because our hearts have been corrupted by sin, and so we need to be constantly rebelling against the powers of hell. Whereas the secular world offers us a constantly shifting vision of how we should try to reform society, Christianity offers something fixed and stable that we can work towards in confidence. Next, Chesterton turns to people who see social progress as a natural, inevitable process. These are the people who think that just by continuing as we are, the world will gradually get fairer or more humane. Chesterton argues that this group need their vision of what progress is to be very simple in order for it to plausibly happen naturally. For example, if the end of the world is for it to descend into darkness alone or into light alone, then we could expect this to happen naturally and inevitably, in the same way that dusk or dawn come on naturally. But if we're expecting the world to progress towards an elaborate, complex composite of darks and lights, then it's plausible that there needs to be some designer, whether human or divine. Another way he explains this is by saying that old pictures naturally turn black, and old coats naturally lose their colour and turn white, but black and white pictures don't come about naturally, they're created by an artist. But why would we assume that the goal of progress is a complex and composite world rather than a simple one? Chesterton appeals to our instinct. The beauty we see in stories, he argues, is not based on simplicity, but on opposite things held in balance. For a fairy tale to be effective, for example, the hero needs to be in balance between wonder and fear. Neither of them can dominate entirely, removing the other. If the world that we're hoping to progress towards is likewise beautiful, it needs to be a world in which opposite and contrasting things, like wonder and fear, are held in balance, not a flat monotony of a single, simple characteristic. To Chesterton, Christianity aligned with this instinct. It seemed to say, yes, the goal of progress is a world that is complex and composite in nature. This is because the whole universe is complex and composite in nature, and this, in turn, is because it's created by a supreme being with infinite intelligence, a being capable of designing it. Chesterton also believed that whatever society we want to move towards as the goal of progress and reform would still need us to be vigilant against corruption and entropy. He points out that monarchies that are adored in one generation can become hated in the next. He points out also that newspapers that fight against injustice and dishonesty in one generation become the perpetrators of it in the next. He gives lots more examples, but they all follow the theme of an institution being popular and positive at one point, and then quickly becoming corrupted and negative. Here again, Christianity seemed to fit directly with what he observed. Christianity, through its doctrine of original sin, completely predicts that humanity is a race of, in Chesterton's word, backsliders. A reason that Chesterton found many secular philosophies of his day insufficient was that they ignored or denied original sin. He talks about a commonly held belief in his day that rich people, because they had enough money to buy everything they needed, couldn't be bribed. Therefore, they were more reliable and incorruptible leaders than poor people. He saw this as complete nonsense. On the contrary, rich people had already been bribed in one sense, and that was why they were rich. Christianity fit perfectly with this belief also. In the Bible, being rich was often portrayed as being in a perilous position and at risk of ruin and corruption. All people are capable of accepting bribes, as all people are capable of being corrupted. Finally, Chesterton talks about how some thinkers saw their goal of progress, their utopia, as a world where people were no longer tied down to personal commitments. People should no longer be held to certain rules, or, for example, have any more duties towards their parents than towards any other people. But to Chesterton, these ties of commitment are what allow us to develop discipline, show fidelity, or have fun. He gives the example that betting is no longer fun if no one holds you up to the bets that you make. Adventure isn't exciting if the peril isn't real and doesn't have consequences. And marriage has no romance if you aren't held to the vows that you make. Here again, Christianity seemed to fit with what he envisaged as the goal of progress and the world he wanted to bring about. The vows and covenants that we make, whilst missing from some modern philosophies, are central to Christianity. Ultimately, Chesterton's account is more of an intellectual history of a conversion than an argument that aims to prove the truth of the claims of Christianity. But I do think that his arguments show that Christianity fits well with truths that we can observe about society and nature. This video is of course a summary, and what it notably lacks is the memorable and eloquent way that Chesterton phrases his arguments. As always, I would thoroughly recommend going back and reading the original piece. It's the chapter called The Eternal Revolution from Chesterton's Orthodoxy. Thanks for watching.